So yesterday I did a video talking about God of War Ragnarok PC performance, and it overall looked really good in the first section of the game in Midgard. And I had a lot of comments saying, wait till you get to Svartalfheim, and a lot of comments also saying, wait until you get to the Realm Between Realms, performance tanks. So in this video, let's test out another GPU. This is the RTX 4060 this time, which is also an 8GB graphics card. That'll be interesting, because last video I looked at the RTX 3060, which is a 12GB card. Also, the 3060 didn't have access to DLSS frame generation, so we saw that FSR frame generation was working effectively on the 30 series card. However, I've seen reports that DLSS frame generation is not working properly in this game. Now, the initial section of this game, again, runs a lot better than other parts of the game. So this is going to be important for people deciding if the performance is going to be good enough for you when you're within your 2-hour return window on Steam, things like that. So here we're at a native 1440p resolution, actually at ultra settings. I know it says custom, but I've individually set everything to ultra so I can still have manual control over everything. So again, native 1440p ultra settings, and we're averaging over 60 frames per second on the RTX 4060. Everything seems to be great in this snowy Midgard section of the game. The game looks great. All of that. And again, even as we get into some, dramatic cutscenes and all that, yeah, performance can dip into the 50s, but things seem overall solid. However, let's load some saves now that I've spent a few more hours playing the game to get access to some of the areas that people were complaining a little more about to investigate. Let's check out the Realm Between Realms and see what our performance looks like. So as we get into here, I'm going to reset my frame rate averages. And this is the first, this is going into this Realm Between Realms, and notice that our frame rate has tanked all the way down to 41 frames per second in this location. So clearly performance tanks here. Now, I've been playing around with the graphics settings to figure out what is the massive issue with this area in particular. Because if you go down to medium settings, it performs really well. Now, also, I think if you're on a 1440p screen, it does make sense on a card like a 4060 to maybe using DLSS quality. So we're going to kick on DLSS quality, but you can see that even doing that, performance still isn't great here. I'll reset the averages, but we're only hitting about 49. So just using some upscaling doesn't solve the problem. But check this out. If we go to these custom settings, leave everything at ultra, and now play with tessellation, okay? Tessellation down to high, we get a bit of a performance boost. By the way, again, I love the graphics menu. It lets you see the changes in real time and your performance changes in real time as you change it. Absolutely love it. But check this out. Now I'm gonna go down to medium tessellation. Frame rate counter just went to 112, guys. 112. Let me back out. It's for real. I'm gonna reset the frame rate counter. We're now well over 100 frames per second. I can look around. It doesn't dip. It even goes up higher when I'm looking this direction. So this section of the game that's causing those issues for people, it's completely the tessellation setting. I don't know if that means there's some optimization issue with the tessellation in this area, but I will say that if you go to tessellation at medium, suddenly the performance in this area of the game just massively night and day difference. So, and again, every single other setting is still left at ultra in that case. So, yes, something seems to be weird about the performance in this area of the game, and it does appear to be entirely related to tessellation going above medium. Now, let's go ahead and also look at another section of the game where I had said that I saw comments saying that performance dips a lot in the Svartalfheim region of the game as opposed to the initial Midgard section of the game. So we've now loaded into, apparently into combat, so here we go. But you can see while we're in combat, let me reset the frame rate counters, which is taking my attention away from the combat. So don't judge me, guys. I have beat this game. I do know how to play it. I'm a little bit rusty, but some health. Okay. You can see that our performance here, I mean, it's not awful, but we're certainly not at the type of performance we saw in Midgard. Keep in mind that right now, we are using DLSS quality, and we're only roughly reaching the levels of performance that we were getting without DLSS quality when we were in that initial Midgard area of the game. again, I should really pay a little bit more attention to the combat. But actually, you know what? Maybe let's stay in combat and let's talk about the graphic settings here a little bit. Okay, so again, we're at DLSS quality, ultra settings except for tessellation. But the other thing I want to mention here is we can put tessellation back up to ultra, and it does have a performance impact. Right now we're at 49. Going down to high, we're at 50. Going down to medium, 51. So notice that in this area of the game, tessellation isn't the big crazy setting that it was in the other in that particular region of the game. Again, indicating that something is kind of wrong with the tessellation settings in that particular section of the game. So here we are at straight ultra settings, and performance isn't where as desired. It's not awful, but we got DLSS quality. We could certainly go down to lower settings though, because another thing I want to point out is that VRAM showing 99% usage right now. Although on my MSI Afterburner and RivaTuner statistics server display here, we're showing 6.5 gigabytes allocated and a little over 5 gigabytes per process usage. So does that mean that because we're so close to 100%, it's actually already spilling into system memory? That's certainly an interesting thing to consider. So we could be seeing some VRAM issues reported by the game that I wouldn't have necessarily noticed in MSI Afterburner because the numbers seem low. So is the game already spilling into system memory? Question mark. If we go down to high settings though, notice that the VRAM's usage is now reporting around 82% in the in-game setting below me right here. And so that actually looks a lot better. Now the overall frame rate is showing about 58 now, so everything going down to high doesn't completely solve all problems. If we go down to medium settings, again, give it a chance to kind of kick in here, now we're showing around 70 FPS. So it's looking like at around medium settings, DLSS quality. Apparently how dare he kill me while I'm changing graphic settings? That's pretty rude. People do that when I'm testing out online games too. It's like they should know if I'm standing still in the bushes, I'm probably changing graphic settings and they should be kind. Anyway, at least this isn't an online game I'm ruining for my teammates. All right, what are we doing here? Okay, combat. So again, we're at medium settings, DLSS quality, and we are on the 1440p screen. The game's overall art direction still looks quite good. So, well, yeah, you can tell not everything's at, a full, ultra setting. I think the game still looks reasonably attractive. So am I concluding the game's like totally unoptimized because Svartalfheim runs harder than Midgard? No, but it is certainly the case that Svartalfheim does run a lot heavier than Midgard. So that is the case. Now, the other thing I wanted to investigate was people saying that frame generation doesn't seem to be working for DLSS frame generation. So first, again, let's get our baseline frame rate. So we're sitting here at about 75 frames per second without frame generation turned on. Now, let's try FSR frame generation. So if we turn on FSR frame generation, which I tested in my last video, hey, look, we get our frame rate increasing to 106 frames per second. In the last video, I talked about, generated frames aren't really helping the responsiveness or anything in the way that, actually rendered game engine frames do, but I don't need to repeat myself for this video. The point is, does DLSS frame generation work? When I turn on DLSS frame generation, notice that our frame rate is now 66. Wait a second, 66. Let's go ahead and turn frame generation off. So if I turn frame generation completely off, performance is now 67. So our performance changed only slightly, and it decreased by 1 FPS when trying to turn on frame generation. Now, my initial thought on what might be wrong here is that it could be related to VRAM, because notice, look, 105% VRAM usage suddenly when we're at medium settings DLSS quality. I've also seen people talking about the game potentially having a VRAM leak, like a memory leak. So another thing I want to look at is what if we reload this save? We've been changing a lot of graphic settings. So what if we reload this save? Is that going to clear maybe our VRAM buffer and have have an impact there. So first, let's try that. I'm going to be honest, this part I haven't really actually investigated too much before filming the video. So we'll do a little bit of investigation in real time. Looks like the enemies are back around. Let's go to the graphics settings. And now, okay, VRAM at 97%. So VRAM usage still seems pretty high, again, especially for being on the medium settings. So that's something to keep out for. What if we go all the way down to low settings just to try to make sure that VRAM is not a particular issue right now? So low settings, it's showing VRAM at 81% here. So we should have some VRAM available. Our frame rate now is 107. What if we go ahead and turn on the DLSS frame generation? And let's take a look. Frame rate is at 100. So we've gone down from 107 to 100. And let's go ahead and look at what it's reporting on the VRAM situation. VRAM's only reporting at 62% now. So there does seem to be some kind of weirdness with the VRAM buffer in this game and how it reports, right? Because I just turned on frame generation and now it's showing a decreased VRAM usage. Maybe it actually cleared some stuff out. I mean, it's also the potential that this is bugged. I mean, here we're showing 4.5 gigabytes allocated and only about 3 gigabytes of per process usage. So again, it could be the in-game one being a bit weird, but the point is that now it doesn't look at all like we're spilling over VRAM, either as reported by the game or MSI Afterburner, but the DLSS frame generation still isn't actually boosting frame rate. And again, if I go to AMD's frame generation, now frame rates are boosting as they should. We're hitting 146. So I will say that it does appear that there's some kind of bug going on with DLSS frame generation not implementing properly. Performance slightly changes when we turn it on. So it's not like the setting in the menu isn't doing anything, but it doesn't seem to actually be reporting an increase to the frame rate like we would expect, even when I've got the VRAM buffer kind of under control. Anyway, so that's my thoughts for this updated video. Maybe I'll get into some combat here. So final thoughts are basically that yes, the game's harder to run beyond the Midgard section of the game, but it's still not particularly heavy compared to a lot of other games that we've seen recently. Compare this to something like Black Myth Wukong or Alan Wake 2 or something like that. And this game is certainly much lighter, and even at the lower graphics settings, the art style of the game goes a long way to making the game look quite attractive, even when you're... Guys, right now I'm on the low settings, right? We're at the low settings right now, and I still think the overall art style is doing a lot to carry the game and have it look pretty reasonable even at these low settings, even if we're obviously... diminished. If we look at the details, you see some, especially in motion, some kind of breakup in those reflections. But again, even if I turn frame generation back off and using the DLSS quality, low settings, we're still able to be pushing around that 100 frames per second. And again, if we turn settings back up, overall, medium settings are pretty performant here. Medium settings DLSS quality on a 1440p screen on an RTX 4060, still hanging out in the mid-80s in Spartal time. So I don't think the game is by any means unoptimized, other than that, like I said, the weird tessellation setting in that realm between realms, and the DLSS FG not seeming to implement properly. And again, some of the reported VRAM usage seemed a bit weird at times. So it is potentially the case that there's some kind of memory leak or something weird going on with the VRAM. Maybe restart the game if you think like that potentially you're having some issues with that, and it would probably help, especially if you're changing the settings a lot. A lot of times games need a full restart to fully clear things and get everything. So even though we see the graphic settings and performance change in real time, maybe restarting the game from scratch could potentially sort out some of those issues. So anyway, hope you guys let me know how, maybe you're further in the game than me. How does it go beyond this point even? Let me know, and I hope all of you have an excellent day.